Yo, welcome back to a brand new video. Look, I understand you hate this game with every fiber of your being, and if you had your way, you'd have it removed from the Nintendo DS library as a whole. But I'm here to tell you that Transformers Dark of the Moon Decepticons is not the absolute shit stain on the DS library that you may or may not think it is. Of course, that's your opinion and you're entitled to that. I thought upon revisiting it, I was going to absolutely despise it, and I came out pretty surprised. Now I will expand on this opinion as the video goes on, but I think this game gets a lot of unwarranted hate. I think it tries to be exactly what it tries to be, and that's a very basic on-rails arcade shooter. Or not on rails, but you'll see what I mean as we go through the gameplay. It's a very simple third-person shooter game. It feels like an arcade game, and it doesn't try to be anything that it isn't. But what this game isn't is an insult to Transformers DS games. So let's dive into the game a little bit more, and I'll expand on my opinion so that you guys don't have to come for my throat and murder me in my sleep. Hope you guys enjoy the video.
Power corrupts us all.
So the time has come to complete my Decepticons trilogy. After 2 videos on Decepticon games and 1 on the Autobots, I thought it was about time that I cover what most people consider to be the all-time low for the Decepticons DS games. Or just the Transformers DS games in general. Dark of the Moon for the Nintendo DS. Now in this video I'll be covering the Decepticons version, of course, but I'll likely make a separate video covering the Autobots version since I believe that one to be a little bit better. Anyways, before I start on anything too juicy, I kinda want to address the claim that this is the worst Nintendo DS game that Transformers has put out on the Nintendo DS. I've seen in my comment sections claims that this is the worst one they've put out. It's abysmal, and even some claims that it's the worst game they have ever played. Well, newsflash, I also played these ones as a kid, and I enjoyed them back then, but replaying them now, do I or do I not agree with the formerly mentioned statements? No. No, I don't. These games hold up surprisingly well, and if I were to rank this game as a whole, I would definitely not put it at the bottom. There are a lot of things wrong with it, of course, which we will get into, don't you worry. All you Dark of the Moon haters out there are gonna get your moment, but there just aren't enough flaws that I found with it to warrant it being spat on like one of those TikTok POVs. Wait, you haven't seen those? You don't get those? like at all? You don't have, I mean, me neither. Me neither, man. Alright, cool. Yeah, no, me neither. Moving on. I feel like before comparing it to its predecessor, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen Decepticons, we should cover this game's story and gameplay first. So let's dive into the plot and see how the game really holds out. You start out as Soundwave in the city after rendezvousing with Starscream.
Soundwave! Starscream. Megatron has ordered a twofold assault on Detroit. Mixmaster is in charge of one of them, but I am to lead the other. An attack on the closest nest facility. You are to create a diversion for me. Explain this diversion. You must create chaos and wreak havoc in the adjacent industrial park. And if any of Optimus Prime's inner circle show up, neutralize them. You are not authorized to give this order. The order comes from Megatron! If you doubt my word, you can take it up with him directly. The order will be validated later. You just wait, Soundwave. You'll regret talking to me that way when I lead the Decepticons.
So this is the tutorial section of the game, where you're given a rundown of the mechanics and a taste of the few objectives you'll be tasked with accomplishing as the game progresses. In this mission, you get a grip for the gunplay, alongside things like destroying buildings and throwing cars. Throwing cars is completely useless, by the way. I don't think I've ever done it outside of this mission, and it's something that I feel was an unnecessary inclusion to this game as a whole. It's trying to be an over-the-shoulder third-person shooter. We don't need clunky objects to throw on top of clunky controls, but that's a discussion for another time. You get taught how to melee, use your secondary weapon, and so forth. So, since this is the tutorial section of the game, why don't I just run down what the mechanics are here, so we can plow through the story when we're done. Sound good to you? Alright, let's get to work. So Transformers Dark of the Moon takes an entirely different approach than its predecessors, and I mean an entirely different approach. The first game adopted an incredible open-world GTA style, while the sequel tried to copy this same format and shove it into a mission-based game, which just didn't really work at all. This game, however, seems to have learned from that and has done something new entirely. Rather than copying from its predecessors, it has created a third-person style shooter game that has you watching your ammunition count, dodging enemy rifle fire with different maneuvers, and choosing when to take cover and or strafe from behind it. Your primary method of attack is your machine gun, of which every character has. Get close enough to an enemy and your gun will lock onto the enemy in front of you. You can then hold down the Y button and fire away, and it's up to you whether to move or not. I mean, if you don't, then you'll probably just die and look like a complete fucking drip, so you might want to take advantage of the strafe controls. Now, speaking of the strafe controls, they can be accessed using the right or left triggers, and allow you to, well, strafe. This is something that was present on the other two games, albeit harder to control in those. Having designated strafe buttons is really nice, and I actually really like the ability to strafe on command. It felt like I had a lot more control over my character while firing off my weapons, and it made it feel like I could dodge enemy fire a lot easier. Speaking of the strafe, it's actually faster to strafe than it is to run forwards in a straight line, so if you're playing this game on an emulator like me, then you'll quickly realize this is actually more beneficial than transforming. You can run at almost double your normal speed without having to bend your dick in 5 places to click the mouse button while you use your hands to control your character's movement. Man, I swear, the one downside to making these DS videos is that these games are evidently supposed to be played on a DS. I can't wait to play and review touchscreen heavy games. Those are going to be some amazing reviews. I wonder what I'll play next. Professor Layton's Touch Yourself Simulator. Yeah, sounds like fun to me. Although if the game is primarily touchscreen, then maybe touching isn't so bad. Anyways, on the topic of touching yourself, and transforming for that matter, you can transform in this game. I know, right? Who would have thought you could do that? It's not like the name of the game is fucking Transformers. Transforming in this game is pretty redundant, however. It gets you from A to B pretty fast, but your vehicle mode weapons aren't as versatile as your robot ones, so unless you're using vehicle mode for quicker transport, there's really no other benefit to it. Although there is one character that benefits greatly from using their vehicle form and nothing else, but we'll get to that towards the end of the video. Don't you worry, we will be getting to that. So what have we covered here so far? We covered the basic gunplay, the transformation, the strafing, movement. Oh yeah, you also have a secondary weapon. Much like the other two games, this one works a little differently. You'll see what I mean in the gameplay in the background. If you divert your beady little eyes to the bottom screen, you'll see a counter next to my missiles. And what this does is tell me how much ammo I have left in my secondary weapon. The secondary weapon is almost like a special move in this game, considering the sheer amount of damage it does. You can either fire off a grenade or a little missile depending on which character you're playing as. In this game, Soundwave and Lockdown use a grenade type weapon, which I believe to be superior, and Megatron and Crowbar utilize the missiles. These are a homing type weapon that will follow an enemy before dealing direct damage to them. They have splash damage too, which is nice, much like the grenades. However, these missiles are a lot harder to hit than the grenades, since enemies can just dodge them. Alright, anything else? Oh yeah, the upgrades. This game, much like the last, has an upgrade system. It's a lot less intricate than the last, mind you, but this time it adopts upgrade slots that you can obtain from hidden areas throughout the levels. Each character has unique ways of accessing these upgrades, most notably Soundwave with his fucking skateboard tail grind down a phone line. You can use these things to upgrade your guns, health, any and almost anything else you can think of pertaining to the gameplay. For this playthrough you're watching in the background, I chose to dump all of my points into my guns rather than anything else, which made the game a little harder towards the end, but a lot more rewarding for the Megatron missions, which we will get to in due time. Don't you worry, we will get to that. With all that being said, I think I've covered most of the basic controls in this game besides the melee, which is pretty self-explanatory, and if I've forgotten anything, let's hope I remember it later. So moving on, let's address the story. The big one you've all probably been waiting for. Let's take a dive into each of the levels and see what this game has to offer for us. So the first level, as I mentioned before, has you take on the role of Soundwave after Starscream requests a diversion to allow him to carry out an attack on a nest facility. It's interesting to see the roles reversed from the previous game, now having Soundwave on the ground as a foot soldier and Starscream being the communications guy. Anyway, you do just that. You create the diversion for Starscream. During this mission, you're introduced to the Starscream air support mechanic, which isn't present in the other games. Despite him not being playable, you can call in Starscream for air support throughout certain points during missions throughout the game, in which he'll come down and rain missiles on your enemies. This is pretty cool, and makes up for him not being a playable character, I guess, although it would have been nicer to see him playable. Once you're done with that, you take control of Crowbar, who's promptly given orders from Starscream.
What you do that for? I don't have time to deal with your questions, Crowbar. Listen closely.
They've just sent me a con. This is a waste of time.
Pay attention! You are to create a distraction around the stadium. All Autobot attention must be diverted from the nest facility.
You shouldn't get so worked up, Starscream. You'll blow a gasket.
Worked up! I speak for Lord Megatron, you pile of junk! You will obey me!
Sure thing, Lord Starscream.
So you're tasked with diverting all Autobot attention from a nest facility by attacking a nearby stadium. I really like the dialogue between Crowbar and Starscream in this scene too. I'm not sure what it is. I like the cocky attitude Crowbar gives off and how Starscream gets so worked up over it. This is the second time now in the game that Starscream hasn't been taken seriously by the other Decepticons, and his reactions are always a lot of fun to watch. It's also nice to note that his voice actor is the returning Steve Blum, who not only voiced your custom character in the first game, but he also voices Starscream himself in the Transformers Prime show. It's a fun fact for you if you didn't already know it. Although, now that I think about it, if you're watching this video, I'd hazard a guess you already knew that, so let's just move on. This mission is pretty simple. Hack a few radars and shoot everything and anyone in sight. It's a lot of fun. This is also the first mission we're introduced to these turret things, which are super easy to kill, but they pack a serious punch if they shoot you, so really be careful with those. You can hack them to make them allies if you want, but I found it a lot more efficient to just kill them. Before I get to the meat of this mission, I wanted to bring up the satellite scanning, since I mentioned it a lot for the previous game. Scanning does make a return in this game, but in my opinion it's the best way they could have possibly done it. It only takes a second to do it, and instead of just holding a button, you're faced with a simple minigame upon doing so, which is a little more engaging. This satellite scanning mechanic is also not used for a single boss fight in the game, which after the shit show that was the previous game's boss fights, I'd be pretty happy about that. The reason I hated the satellites so much in the last game is because that was literally almost all you had to do. That was every single objective, whereas here, it might be a common objective, but it doesn't feel anywhere near as boring and monotonous as the Revenge of the Fallen game did. Every satellite is guarded by Autobots anyways, so you always get to have a shootout before doing the minigame. Anyways, the main meat of this level, like I mentioned before, is that at the end of it, you get an Ironhide boss fight out of nowhere. Seriously, I was surprised when he first showed up, because I just wasn't expecting him to come in, busting into the stadium, start shooting me up my ass crack. Once you scan the 2 radar dishes in the stadium, he rocks up through the entrance and tries to kill you. And he's not that hard to beat, and with that you can move on to the next mission. It's just such a surprise to see him there.
Lockdown! Megatron has ordered you to infiltrate the nearby nest facility.
Finally, something that plays to my strengths.
Hack the nest supercomputer and look for anything involving Shockwave or Operation Pillar.
And any Autobots who interfere.
Feel free to neutralize them.
On my way.
So here is the point in the game where the story and the missions you carry out stop making a lot of sense. It does pick up a bit later in the game, but you'll see what I mean. Starscream just told us to infiltrate a nearby nest facility, right? But the mission we're carrying out is a boss battle with Optimus Prime on the 3rd level of the game. It's a bit strange, but he did say that if any Autobots get in your way, to neutralize them, so perhaps Optimus showed up to stop Lockdown almost immediately? Who knows, but that's what I'm going with to fill in the gaps. It's also really cool that the Transformers animated Lockdown is the one they used in this game before the Age of Extinction days. I watched the animated show as a kid a lot, so it's nice to see this form here. Anyways, the fight with Optimus Prime is pretty fun, and it's also pretty simple. Chase him down and shoot the shit out of him, rinse and repeat. That's it, I'm not joking. It's a pretty basic fight that's akin to the Bumblebee and Barricade fight from the first game. There, however, it was reduced to being one boss fight among many. Here, every boss fight follows the same formula. However, I don't mind it here anywhere near as much as I did in the Revenge of the Fallen game. Now, before you call me out on that, the Revenge of the Fallen game had you lazily circling the boss who stayed completely still, while you peppered them with missiles before scanning a satellite to kill them. Sounds fun. Well, it really wasn't. Here, it's just an all-out brawl. Something about that is inherently a lot more fun to me, and if you disagree, that's perfectly fine. However, I feel like in a game about big robots shooting each other, the more fun road to take when it comes to boss fights is the one that has you mindlessly smashing into each other and blasting each other with missiles. So yes, while the boss fights in this game are pretty repetitive and don't go far in the way of variety, they're still pretty fun and I enjoyed playing them. It felt like a real fight every time, rather than scanning satellites to kill them. One thing I do miss from the previous game's boss fights, however, is the dialogue that you and the character you're facing would have had before the fight. Something this game is seriously lacking. Most of the time, the bosses just show up without saying anything, whereas in the previous game, there was a reason for fighting them. For example, you fought Ironhide because he stood between you and Jetfire, which is really cool and it gives us a reason to fight him. Here, you don't really get that, but anyways, you get what I'm trying to say. The boss fights require little or no brain power and they're really fun to do. So regardless, you beat Optimus Prime and that's that. He's done. You might be wondering to yourself, but wait, if he's done here, then who's the final boss of the game? And to that I say, wait and see, my friend. Wait and see, because it'll probably shock you a lot more than it shocked me, if you know what I mean.
Lockdown! Is the data damaged? Are you functional?
I'm here, Starscream. The data's fine.
Then why have you stopped moving?
Just basking in the moment.
You idiot! That data's worth more than you are. Send it immediately!
Calm down. Transmitting now.
The Autobots have taken over an abandoned Sector 7 facility in the Pacific. I believe you've given us our next target.
And to think you doubted me.
So the next mission has you continue on as Lockdown fighting Mirage, which is a pretty fun fight. I had more difficulty with this one than I did with the Optimus Prime one, and I also think this one was a lot more fun. The environment looked nicer, and the level was just a lot more dynamic and fun to run around in. It felt like a level from the Dark of the Moon Xbox 360 game, which was nice. Anyways, once you're done with Mirage, we move on to the 5th level of the game.
Robot, report!
I'm still on patrol, Starscream.
Be advised, Optimus Prime is there on the island. If you encounter him, pursue and destroy him.
The strongest of the Autobots. I like the sound of this.
This one makes the least sense for me, because the intro cutscene has nothing to do with the rest of the level. The intro cutscene tells you that Optimus Prime is with you on the island. So, okay, I thought naturally it would be another boss fight where you take on Optimus Prime, but this time as Crowbar. No, this mission has you drive around the island destroying buildings and killing regular Autobots. This is fine, and I had a lot of fun doing this, but what did that have to do with Optimus Prime? Was he supposed to be a secret boss? Is there a random chance you encounter him or something like that? Why did Starscream even mention it if he's not going to show up? I'm not sure. Maybe it was a glitch or something, who knows? All I know is that he didn't show up, and I spent the whole mission completely Prime free. Who would have predicted we got stood up by Optimus Prime in this game? An absolute ball hang.
Lockdown! Megatron needs you to create another diversion.
I'm listening.
Inside the Autobot base, go and destroy their communication arrays as loudly and messily as possible.
With pleasure. This is part of bringing Shockwave back, right? Is he really as big and bad as they say?
Do not concern yourself with Shockwave. You are to focus on the task at hand. That is all.
Fine. I'm on it.
This next mission has you infiltrate the Autobot base and destroy their communication, another basic run and gun level where you kill almost every Autobot you can find. Lockdown asks in the opening cutscene if all of this fighting is part of bringing back Shockwave, the ancient Decepticon assassin. Starscream brushes off his comment and tells him not to concern himself with Shockwave, which is interesting to me. I know I'm about to give the devs way too much credit here, but I feel like the ambiguity with the story coincides well with how the Decepticons of higher ranks are hiding their ultimate plan. You're fed very little information about Shockwave throughout the game, and it almost feels like it's on purpose, to drive away from the fact that Screw it. Now, you know the devs didn't think about this when making this game. Who made this game anyways? Who's responsible for... Oh. Oh. What? Okay, and now it all makes sense. Now I understand. Anyway, moving on from Dead by Daylight Transformers, let's look at the next level.
Have you infiltrated the base yet?
Affirmative.
You'd better stay quiet. If you don't find the MechTech data in that base, Megatron will be sorely displeased.
Agreed. Your radio silence is appreciated.
No, yes, of course. Radio silence would be best. Starscream out!
So this mission has you searching for weapons data in the Autobot base as Soundwave. What this means in the game's terms is, shoot every son of a bitch in sight until you scan a computer at the end of the level to steal the data. I wasn't kidding when I said this game was an arcade shooter. Literally all of the levels have you running through a preset location, gunning down any poor SOB that gets in your way. Anyways, I really like the opening cutscene for this mission. It gives Blum's Starscream a little moment to shine, as he's basically told to shut up by Soundwave. Soundwave even has a little disapproval animation when Starscream logs off the radio, which is a nice detail. This is one of my favourite cutscenes in the game, purely for the character interaction between these two. The unstable confidence from Starscream, followed by a sarcastic jab by Soundwave, leading into Starscream anxiously retreating from the conversation, is perfectly in character for him, and it further cements Starscream as this cowardly authority figure that no one takes seriously. Through all the disjointed plot to mission alignments that are scattered across this game, it still has its moments where characters' personalities shine through, albeit very short moments. The end of this mission has you face off against Ironhide again, who comes in just a second too late to stop you stealing the weapons data from the Autobots. Once you defeat him, he retreats, and you're tasked with escaping the Autobot base as almost everyone present tries to kill you. You can approach this one of two ways. You can drive out, ignoring everyone around you, but leaving yourself defenseless in the process, or you can run and gun your way out. With the way this game is engineered, I think you already know which is the superior option to choose. Also, real quick, I'm editing this video right now, and I was thinking, damn, the music in this game is seriously amazing at points. Like, just listen to the battle music here. Put that track over the Optimus fight in the first Decepticons game and it would have been almost too good to be true. Anyways, I got a video to finish making, the one you're watching actually, so I'll let you get on with it.
Is your directive clear?
You need to get out of here. I need to run interference for you while you're doing it. Simple.
Maintain vigilance. Bumblebee has been sighted nearby.
Really? I despise that shiny little twerp. This just gets better and better.
So this next mission has you tackle Bumblebee, to allow Soundwave to escape the Autobot base with the weapons data. Bumblebee is a pretty fun boss fight, however I did run into some frame rate issues that could have just been my emulator bugging, so I'm not gonna count that. Once you're done with Bumblebee, you get another generic run and gun level with Crowbar, before getting to play as Soundwave again with direct orders from Megatron.
Soundwave.
Yes, Megatron.
I have an important task for you.
Proceed.
The radar emplacements surrounding our position are set to transmit a jamming signal, but they also prevent us from surveilling our immediate surroundings.
I will monitor the area.
Very good. Make haste to the emplacements.
As you command.
This is the first time in the game that we hear Megatron's voice, and having it come over Soundwave's radio feels pretty fitting, to be honest. He's also got a new voice in this game, a Hugo Weaving impersonator as opposed to using Frank Welker again, and I think having Frank Welker's Megatron voice next to this Soundwave voice would have sounded wrong anyways, akin to how he sounded next to Starscream in the previous game. I'm glad they fixed this and chose a more imposing voice for the character here. Anyways, this mission has you run and gun down some Autobots while scanning some radars here and there, before thrusting you into the final two missions.
Megatron! The Autobots are overrunning the base! Where are you? I am on my way to Shockwave, you moron! Where else would I be?
But he is an assassin! What if he turns on you in your still weakened state?
Prime has left me with no other choice.
If you fail to survive this, Megatron. I will dedicate my reign as leader to honoring your name.
When I survive this, Starscream, you and I will discuss your treacherous display of ambition.
The first of these two has you take on the role of Megatron for the first time, and when I tell you he's broken, you better believe he's the most broken a character has ever been in any of these games. His kit consists of a machine gun, as per usual, a rocket launcher, his mace melee attack from the first film, which is really cool to see, and his tank form. Now before I talk about the tank form, I just want to say that it's actually really appreciated to see things from the films come back up in the game. They did this for Starscream's transformation in the Revenge of the Fallen DS game, and I liked that they added that in. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out my Revenge of the Fallen DS video in the description below. Anyway, the tank mode for Megatron is where this character really shines. His vehicle mode controls just like any other, but it's his weapons that make him as imposing as he is. He has an infinite supply of missiles that come out of his tank's cannon. They're pretty much one-shot enemies, no matter how powerful they are. You can almost always just drive around spamming missiles and almost nobody can stop you, unless they get close enough to melee, and then you're a bit fucked, aren't you? All the while during this mission, Megatron is spouting one-liners about killing the Autobots, and overall it's just a really satisfying mission to play. And once you're done with it, we move on to the final mission of the game, which is a final boss stage. And who do you think it could be? Optimus Prime? Starscream again? Shockwave, perhaps?
Megatron.
Who speaks to Lord Megatron?
Ironhide, I hacked this channel from one of your goons.
Clear this channel at once.
I know what you're doing, Megatron. We found out about Shockwave.
Then you should also know that I'm going to succeed, and that the Autobots are doomed.
You'd better hope I never get my hands on you.
Nah. It's just Ironhide, really.
Such heroic nonsense.
Now I know they've chosen this because in the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions of the Dark of the Moon game, Megatron faced off against Ironhide, but this is just a really strange choice in my opinion. In that version of the game, Megatron fights Optimus Prime right before activating Shockwave, not Ironhide. So it's really weird that they've chosen Ironhide to be the final boss of the game rather than Optimus, just based on that context alone. But whatever, it is cool to see someone other than Optimus Prime be the final boss. And I do like curveballs like that, so I'm mostly fine with it. Ironhide would usually be a pretty hard final boss if you were any character other than Megatron. His grenades deal copious amounts of damage to you, and getting hit by one alone is fatal. Luckily for you, you have Megatron's tank form, which you can use to pepper Ironhide with missiles until he dies. It took me about 3 seconds to kill him in the final boss phase of this level, which is absolutely ridiculous, but it felt incredibly satisfying to do. Anyway, you beat Ironhide, and then you get the final cutscene.
You are a true warrior, Ironhide.
I'll get him next time.
So, did we just win? This battle, yes, we won, Ratchet. But we're still fighting the war. The important thing is that we're still alive, and when the Decepticon threat resurfaces, we'll be ready to meet it.
Lord Megatron, are you damaged? Can you function?
Try not to sound so hopeful, Starscream. I am functional. But the time has come for a strategic retreat. We must mass our strength so that in our next encounter, we can crush them to dust before they have a chance to resist.
The weird thing about this cutscene is that Prime says the Autobots won this battle. Well, to that I say, no. I'm pretty sure Megatron just activated Shockwave and defeated Ironhide, and that would mean a victory for our side, right? Why are the Autobots bragging about winning here? They didn't do shit. Well, not exactly. You see, this ending of the game is the exact same one from the Autobots version. This game uses the same story ending from its alternate version, which is a bit of a letdown. The blanks that the game isn't filling in here are as follows. In the final fight, what you can't tell through all the pixely, blocky mess that is what we call this game's graphics, Ironhide actually defeats Megatron, causing him to retreat, activating Shockwave as he does so. This is something that's not covered in the DS version of the game, but the console version covers pretty well, albeit in like a slightly different context because of the whole Optimus thing. And now that I think about it, this is something this game does quite frequently. The game constantly talks about things that are happening or acts like something's happened without actually explaining or showing why or how that happened. Though through all of that, I don't think it matters. And before you come for my throat saying that this game's story sucking balls, which it doesn't matter, hear me out. This game is incredibly different from its predecessors, so much so that I wouldn't even consider it part of the same line of games. The gameplay is almost entirely changed, swapped out for this third-person arcade shooter style of game. This game is trying to be a fun, mindless run-and-gun shooter, and when it's all said and done, it achieves that pretty well. It's a simple game that just wants you to pick it up, play a level, shoot some Autobots, and put it back down again. This game kinda embodies what a travel on-the-go DS game should be. The mechanics are simple to understand and there's not much else to it. The boss fights are simple but fun, the weapons are enjoyable to use, and there's just the right amount of challenge so that it's not drop-dead boring. The driving is also a nice step up from the second game, albeit still worse than the first by quite a lot, but let's be honest, can anything really touch that game? The vehicles all handle the same, but they handle well, and that's what matters to me. The vehicle weapons are a risk to use, but sometimes that risk is worth taking, especially in Megatron's case where his tank form is more vulnerable, but is that much stronger. It makes him into a sort of glass cannon, and none of the other characters really have much going on for their vehicle modes in comparison. Speaking of characters, the 4 playable characters in this game are okay. You get Soundwave, which is really cool. You get Megatron, which is really cool. Yeah, and then you get Crowbar, who appears for like 2 minutes before he gets murdered by Sideswipe and Ironhide. And you get fucking Lockdown. Why? He's not... like, Transformers Animated Lockdown as well. Like, it's appreciated. I like that he's there, but why? I mean, I know I'm kind of complaining about this, but I never really gave it much thought during the game who I was playing as. It just would have been nice to see more movie characters utilized, like the bigger ones. I think this game would have been a lot better if the cast was Starscream, Soundwave, Megatron, and Shockwave. That's a good cast, in my opinion. That would have made for a much more movie-authentic experience too, since they have the most development in the films, and with this being a movie-based game, it is nice to play those characters you spend so long watching on screen. It also would have been nice since Starscream and Shockwave literally have character models in the game, so I doubt it would have taken a lot to put them in as playable characters. There's even the argument that maybe Starscream would have been complicated since he's a jet, but if you wanted to be really lazy about it, you could have just had him have the same driving mechanics as the others, but just hover on top of the ground as a jet or something. I don't know, there's a way to do it if you really don't want to let him fly around the map or anything like that. Now, of course, there are things I don't like so much about the game, and while we're on the topic of kind of complaining a little bit because we just spoke about the playable characters, this is probably a good time to talk about the things I don't like so much. Do I wish there were more characters to choose from? Yes. Do I wish the story were more cohesive? Yes. Do I wish the graphics weren't such a visual downgrade from the second game, let alone the first? Of course I do, but these things aren't enough for me to hate the game with such a passion I see from some people. I guess for me, I saw this game from a completely different lens than I did the second one. This game is almost entirely new, with its dynamic menus and all their intricate animations to the character voice acting. The second game, however, reuses assets and gameplay elements from the first without expanding on them. It actually regresses on the first game. The second game just felt like a feeble attempt at recreating the first one's gameplay without doing much original, and for that I felt like it suffered. Not that I dislike that game, I think a lot of people got the wrong impression. I don't dislike the Revenge of the Fallen game, but when writing a video about it, trying to criticize it, it is a pretty ass game. You know, I still have nostalgia for it, I played it when I was a child, and I will still enjoy it whenever I play it, but compared to the first one, which is clearly trying to imitate, it doesn't really have a leg to stand on. I will be covering that game again, since I've now decided to look at the Autobots version. Contrary to what I said in the video, I do want to cover the Autobots version, because I seem to remember enjoying that one a little bit better, but for now let's conclude my feelings on this game. So in conclusion, I'm going to present you with a question. Have any of you ever played one of those arcade cabinet shooters like Tomb Raider, or the Alien one, or the Luigi's Mansion arcade, or hell, even the Transformers one, of which there's one actually sitting in my local mall? Well, I'm going to ask you something. While playing those shooter games, were you or were you not heavily focused on the story, the greater plot, or anything that wasn't the mindless shooting that you just lost your quarter or pound coin to indulge in? If the answer is yes, then, well, fair play, you fucking psycho. But if the answer is no, then that's the same feeling I have towards this game. I feel the same way about this game as I do other brain-dead shooter games, where the only objective is to run and kill without regard of anything else. It's not a perfect game, but I don't think it warrants all the hate that it gets. Is it better than the first game? Fuck no. Nothing is, and nothing can really touch that game in my opinion. However, that game did set the bar incredibly high for future games, which is why I think so many people are disappointed with the later installments. Is it better than Revenge of the Fallen? I don't know. They're so different that they're really hard to compare. Revenge of the Fallen was clearly trying to be the first game and failing pretty miserably, whereas this game isn't trying to be anything except what it sets out to be, which is a game you can whip out and play a level or two of on your way back from the airport in your parents' car on a cold winter's night in 2012. I read a tweet a while ago that asked, what's better, a bad game or a boring game? And I thought, that's an interesting question. You know, a boring game has nothing going for it, because even if segments are well made, or dare I say good, it doesn't matter, because you're not having fun playing them. A bad game is still redeemable by the fact it's not inherently awful, you know, it's not a complete slog to sit through. You can still have fun with bad games, even if it's just screwing around with glitches and the like. And for that reason, in my personal opinion, this game is heavily overhated and criminally underrated. Now real quick, I just want to thank you all for watching. That does conclude the Decepticons trilogy. I will cover the War for Cybertron games, don't worry, I will be talking about those, even if I don't play them in their entirety, because I know that those ones are a little bit longer, if my research is correct. Obviously this game, I posted a little thing on my community tab a while ago before recording this voiceover, and I said, I gave a little like teaser thumbnail that said the most underrated game or something like that, you know, the underrated sequel, and I think a lot of people got the wrong impression. I don't think this game is amazing. I think it is underrated because of how everyone treats it. Everyone treats it like the Black Plague, and for that I think, you know, it is quite literally underrated. Like there's nothing inherently awful about it, in my opinion. The other one, then again, I kind of just enjoy all of these games. Of course, the first one will be leaps and bounds above the rest, but I don't know. I like all of them. I like the Dark of the Moon game. I like the Revenge of the Fallen game. Regardless of what I said before, I really do like them. I like all of them, and I go back and play them fairly frequently, like a few times a year, I'd say. I said fairly frequently, that's not that frequent, but I do go back and play them. I do love these games. These games are all part of my childhood, and I don't think I have it in me to hate any of them. And I see the first one, you know, get the praise that it deserves. I see the second one get mixed reviews and opinions, but most people are like okay with it. You know, I agree, it's a pretty okay game, it's alright. But this is the one that gets so much hate, and I just think it doesn't deserve it. The game isn't really anything special compared to the other game, the first one I mean specifically, but it's not bad, it's not terrible, and we don't need to treat it as if it's absolute dog shit, you know? I don't think it is the worst thing out there in terms of Transformers DS games. In fact, I'm pretty sure the worst one is one I haven't even played before, but before I can even review that, I need to figure out how to emulate a 3DS. I've seen a few of you also say you would like to see my Megatron movie treatment, which is, you know, something I teased in my last video. And now I'm sitting here thinking, oh damn, it was only like a brief idea, and now I've got to like flesh it out and make sure that it's like able to make it into a video. But I do want to talk about my Megatron movie. It'll just take me a while to put it together in video format, so if you guys just have a little bit of patience with me, I will have that Megatron movie video out for you. But anyways, that is all I have to say in this little after script section, because most of this video is scripted, but this part is just me rambling. I do appreciate you all tuning in. If you did enjoy what you saw here today, make sure to hit a like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications if you wish. If you don't want to, feel free not to. Completely your own thing. Don't let me pressure you. And anyways, I got to go see the Batman now. It is currently the 7th of March 2022, and I have about half an hour to get down to the cinema. So with that being said, I'm gonna go watch Batman and see if it's as good as everyone says. Thank you so much for sticking around, and I will see you all in the next one.
Batman.